Okay.
No, I mean, because
There we go. Okay, gentlemen, let's go. I keep wanting to take off my hat, but I can't take off my hat.
Buying a lot of coffees.
I don't have a yarn.
So I want to know how much caffeine you have at the end of it.
I don't like to drink coffee on flights.
My first flight is at 3 in the morning.
Nice.
Come
I
on.
popped like 5
Picked up a
Benadryls.
Nate's on the flight.
Yeah.
5 Benadryls?
I could do that.
Bro, you're gonna see Hat Man.
You're right.
If you keep that up. You're gonna see the Hat Man.
Who's the hat?
Google the Hat
I
Man.
could do a lot of things as well.
Okay.
What time do you land in Toronto?
Am I gonna not like this?
No. No, you won't. You'll think it's funny.
So the same day from your account.
No, there's like probably like a Wikipedia article.
Comfortable with my hat.
Is it Wikipedia?
Okay, when I say
$4 or 5 hours.
Shadow fishing.
Base Gimmel and Dalet, the Rebbe gives us two different reasons why the Pikach chooses the king. The first, in the context of explaining all of the evolution of Avodah Zarah. So the mistake that the Evdei Avodah Zarah made was to give too much credence too much power to the intermediaries, and ultimately thought that the intermediaries must have a maila, must have certain greatness, because after all, they were chosen by HaKadosh Baruch Hu to be these intermediaries. And that's all a mistake. And the Pikach realizes that, and he realizes it's all coming from the Eibishter, and that the Ois Gimmel, the line that defines Ois Gimmel is Garz and Biad HaChaitzev, that they are all simply the axe in the hand of the woodchopper. That's Ois Gimmel. In Ois Daled, the Rebbe explains things in a slightly different way. In Ois Daled, so the Rebbe asks a question, and the question is in the Medrash. So the mashal for the intermediaries are these people who actually have bechira, who have choice, and can make decisions. So then there must be a deeper level as to why it is that the Pikach picks the king and not the intermediaries. And what was that reason? What did the Rebbe say in Ois Daled? What was the main point? Mm-hmm. That he wants the melech because the melech's the melech. Right? He wants the melech. And why is it that anybody would not want the melech? So the Rebbe explains in this mimer that in order to receive hashpah from klipa, you don't have to be batel. Right? It just comes. Right? The source of it is, the Rebbe explained yesterday at the end of the Ors, the source of that klipa is makif. Makif, like the sun was Arbasha, the sun shines down on everything. You do not have to do any avodah. Whoa. I'm going to look for another one, but in the meantime, this is perfect. Thank you. This is a little. It's also good, but thank you very much. It's perfect. In the meantime, it's perfect. I can take off my hat and let's everybody see. Well, there we go. Let them on YouTube get all excited. I feel like a campus rabbi. I should put on jeans and a t-shirt.
I was joking. I'm excited to see my campus rabbi.
What?
Oh, same. I'm excited to see my campus rabbi.
Yeah, campus rabbis are holy people. Okay, so no, it's all right. It should stay on. It should stay on unless I get very excited.
There's so much color.
Yeah.
Bring them home is just talking about us getting back home from yeshiva.
So the Pikach wants the king because the king is the king. So why would someone not want the king? Someone might not want the king because in order to have a relationship with the king, you have to be in a state of bittul. Right? So in order to receive hashpah from Kedusha, you have to be in a state of bittul. It takes work. Right? If just in simple pshat, right? If all you were interested in is somehow now it doesn't really work. We know that. Okay, Beseder. But relative to certain things, it does work. There's no question, right? But if all you wanted was lots of gashmias and what's called the good life, so then this Yiddishkeit gets in the way. Throw away the Yiddishkeit, go do what you have to do and go make a bunch of money and do whatever you want, right? I mean, couldn't do that? You figure out how to do that. Most people can figure out how to do that, right? It takes a little mazel, okay, Beseder. But that's what's so interesting is if you want to play the game of klipa, so then pretty much it's not so difficult to win that game on some level. but winning isn't necessarily winning in the way we would like to win. Okay, say them. But what does the peacock want? The peacock realizes that there's more to life, and there's something called truth, and there's something called the king, and he wants to be connected to the king, and he wants that which he receives from the king, who's the source of all goodness. And even the duchsin realize that it all comes from the king, and even the people who go to the duchsin realize that it all comes from the king. Right? We're not talking about people who are denying the existence of the king. Right? They know it all comes from the king, but they're not interested enough in a relationship with the king in order to do those things necessary to have a relationship with the king, which is called bittul. Right? Realizing that your agenda isn't the agenda that ultimately should run your life, the king's agenda, because you're a subject of the king. Right? And on your passport, it will introduce you as a subject of the king, not as I don't know what it says now, but in the old days, a Canadian passport and a British passport and an Australian passport. Ask the country to, I have to look at my passport and see what it says. But in the old days, what it said was, the governor, my passport said, or Canadian passport said, the Governor General of Canada asks that you allow the subject of Her Majesty the Queen entrance into your country. Not the citizen, the subject. Right? What's a subject? It's bittul. Right now, okay, it's all a show with the British monarchy. Okay, we know that. Meaning, it's changed from what it was 300 years ago. It's a nice show. I like the show. I think it's a good show. Right? Fine. Okay, but it's not really in charge. Okay, but the king really is in charge. The king, meaning the Eibishter, really is in charge. And if you want a connection to the Eibishter, so you have to be a subject of the Eibishter. What does it mean to be a subject of someone? It means you're bottled to them. Okay, Beseder. So in order to receive the Kedusha, you receive the Hashpah through the channels of Kedusha, that requires certain behavior. Right? I have to connect to Kedusha. How do I connect to Kedusha? By listening to what the king wants done in order to be connected to the king. And if I don't listen to what the king wants done, I'm not connected to the king. So then the king, in his ultimate mercy, keeps me alive. Right? And I might, as the Rebbe said in the amazing part of what we say, as the Rebbe says, that it might even be I'll get more temporarily, but I could get more stuff. Okay, but it's not coming from a state, it's not coming from a place of Kedusha. So the peacock wants it to be coming from a state of Kedusha, right? Even if it's less. And even though the peacock knows that if he acts another way, he can get more, and as a matter of fact, because he's a Yid, he might even get more than everybody else. Why? Well, because it's the way the Eibishter runs the world, right? The Eibishter runs the world in such a way that the notion of our choices is very real to us. Right? He gives us real choices. Right? And I'm using the word choice as opposed to bechira, right? The English word choice. He allows us to do whatever we want. Does he kill us when we disconnect from him? No. You do whatever you want. You can be the worst, biggest lowlife in Gashmias, in Ruchnias, whatever. You'll get up the next morning. So the Eibishter runs the world. You want to do that? Fine, no problem. You're going to live in a world full of people like that, and you're going to suffer the consequences. But beside it, whatever you want, do whatever you want. Right? We've talked about it before, right? The Eibishter will let someone sit at a computer and write a book about the fact that the Eibishter doesn't exist, and he'll give him up. He'll give him life to write that. Who's giving that guy the vitality to write that book? The Eibishter. You'd do that? I wouldn't do that. If I was in charge and some guy's writing a book about the fact that I don't exist, I think he would probably fall over dead in the middle of writing the book, right? I'll just make sure his whole family's in the room first, just to make it better. Right? The Eibishter completely chill. Do whatever you want. Why? Because then if we do what he wants, it's real, it's true, and we connecting to Kedusha is something that actually matters. And that's what the Rebbe is explaining in this fascinating way in the context of this mimer. Okay, so let's go weiter and see what the Rebbe says in Hey. V'hinei, hatam shel hapikeach. The reason, now we had two basic questions. So we sort of understand. Obviously, we're going to have to understand this more deeply, and the Rebbe is going to ask some penetrating questions soon. But we sort of understand the idea of why it is that we chose the Eibishter, why it's called the choice, because there really is the opportunity to do something else, and that opportunity, a person doesn't lose, right? They might even temporarily, it seems, win, and you have to be pretty smart. And it's interesting, the Rebbe's talked about it on two different levels. The gimmel is the intellect of it. and Dalet is the neshama of it, the intellect of it. You have to realize what's really going on, and are these intermediaries real? No, the person understands intellectually what's really going on, right? With his seichel. Okay, Dalet, it's all about his innate connection to the king, because he has a neshama. Because ultimately, what are we trying to explain? What does the verse say? Chelki avaya amar nafshi, it says that the Eibishter is my portion, right? Okay, so meaning I have an essential connection to the Eibishter. So that's more in Dalet than in Gimmel. Gimmel is seichel. Dalet is neshama. Now we're going to have to figure out how he's called a pikach. A pikach means someone who's clever, so that seems to be seichel. We'll see, the Rebbe is going to make an incredible, he's going to explain to us quite an incredible way later on in the Maimer how those two things merge together. It's an excellent cup of coffee. Thank you very much. If I fall asleep at 10:30, I'll have to see what happens. Okay, so the second thing we had to understand why it's called a choice, so we understand that on some level from love from Gimmel and Dalet. The second thing we had to say was the reason. The reason didn't make any sense. I don't need a reason. And anyway, if I need a reason, I already have reasons. I just have two reasons. I just gave two reasons in Gimmel and Dalet why the pikach might choose the king. Right? So, but what do we need? That the king doesn't disappear and they disappear. What do I need that reason for? So let's see what the Rebbe says. Hatam shalapikach. In the Medrash, the reason that the pikach chooses the king, that he chooses the king and not the ministers, who mipnei dekulu mischalfinu malka le mischalif, right? That they all are interchangeable and the king isn't. Now, whenever you see that word l'cha'ura, haya efshar leimar kavana b'zeh l'cha'ura. At first glance, you could say the reason is like this. You know that this is not going to be the reason because this is only at first glance, and there's going to be problems with this explanation, and we're going to have to explain it more deeply. Okay, whenever you see l'cha'ura, haya efshar leimar kavana b'zeh, you could say that the intention is as follows: sha'ashpa habami le'umazeh. All of the bounty, all of the I mean, we call it bracha, but whatever. But I mean, it is ultimately bracha. It's just bracha coming from a negative place, but it ultimately we know is sourced in a Kadosh Baruch Hu, right? The Eibishter is sending down this shefa. It's all coming from him, even to the people who are what we're going to be called soon Evrei Ritzeinei, who are transgressing his desires. Still coming from him, right? That the shefa ba milumazeh, but it's coming through these channels of tuma. Im heyeser beribu yeser, even though it's a greater amount. Mi hashpa ba mi kedusha, from the hashpa that comes from kedusha, because as we said in Dalet, the hashpa that comes from the kedusha is measured in line with the Avodah that's drawing it down to the extent that this person's Avodah is as it should be. So to that extent, they draw down Kedusha to themselves, they draw down Bracha to themselves, but that Bracha is commensurate to their Avodah. So therefore, it's going to be limited because their Avodah is limited. Hu davar mischalef, it's something that changes. She'ein lo kiyum, it doesn't last ultimately. Why not? So now the Rebbe says something very interesting, and the simple pshat is we're talking about Yemez Mashiach. Ki la'achrei a biur, after the rectification of all of reality. When does that happen? That happens Yemez Mashiach. Kishiyizbareru and nitzutzes, when all of the sparks of holiness have been rectified from their temporary state of golus in a state of klipa, shenaflu baklipas, that these these sparks of kedusha fell into negative reality. Shemizeu chayis shalahem, and this is the chayis of the klipa. Meaning, where does klipa get its chayis? So I don't know whether the Rebbe said this yet. We'll see it in a minute, but you'll probably run into it. It's yoinek mina kedusha. it's nourished by kedusha. So what is the kedusha that ultimately nourishes klipa? So simply, it's the sparks of kedusha that fall in the world, the Reish Nun Beis Nitzutzaitz, right? Okay, the sparks of holiness that fall into physical reality and power physical reality. Because ultimately, the source of everything is the Eibishter, even negative reality. Right? Now, we've talked about this before. Negative reality, before human beings get their hands on it, is only potentially negative. Right? It's not actually negative. It just can be expressed in a negative way. The only creature that can bring about the actualization of that potential is called a human. Humans are the only ones who can do something that is against the will of a Kadosh Baruch Hu. But the Eibishter gives that opportunity down here in Olam Hazeh by virtue of creating a reality that can be used for those purposes. Right? Okay, so the Eibishter created things that, for a Yid, right, are asar to eat. Okay, that means the possibility of doing that Aveira exists. Now, the ultimate purpose, we're going to see in the Maimer much more later, but the ultimate purpose of all of that is that you and I should actually do something called a Veda by not eating it. Because if there's nothing there that's not kosher, then keeping kosher doesn't really mean very much, does it? So malachim, being malachim is, it's impressive because they're holy beings, but it's not as impressive as a Yid doing a mitzvah, because a Yid doing a mitzvah, he has the possibility of not doing a mitzvah. And therefore the fact that he did a mitzvah actually is something quite impressive. Hopefully not to himself, but to the Eibishter. And objectively, because the opportunity to do something else exists, which is what the Rebbe is explaining to us in such an incredible way right now. Why the world works the way it works, and how does it work? Why is there this reality that seems to be so negative and horrible? See, Eibishter wants there to be such a reality. Now, again, he doesn't want the actualization of that potential, but he wants that potential to exist in Olam Hazeh so that the people in the world can do something called Aveda. And that Aveda is not acting in the way that they theoretically could, if all they care about is themselves. If they care about themselves, they're going to act in a certain way. If they care about something that's real, they'll act in a different way. I want to give them that opportunity, meaning I'm going to create something called tachtonim. So it could really be tachtonim. It could really be a very low level of reality. But it doesn't have to be. It can also be a place of the most powerful godly revelation imaginable. I'm going to give them the possibility of doing A or B. It'll be up to them. Why he was interested in all of this, we don't know. He had a taiva to watch it all happen. Right? So he's watching it all happen. He even knows how it turns out. To say they're okay, but evidently it's still... It's nice watching the replays when you win, because in the end it all works out. Right? So it's nice watching, even though you know what happens in the game. It's fun to watch the game. If your team wins at the end, if your team doesn't win at the end, you don't want to watch the game. It's no fun. But if your team wins, so you can watch the game again and again and again. So the Eibishter is watching away. Watch us vargling around down here in Olam Hazeh. Right? Losing our yarmulkes on the street. Someone's going to walk along the street to the bus and see a yarmulke and go, oh. Now, he's probably going to assume it's some 12-year-old kid, right? Which is a reasonable assumption. We all have a little kid in us, right? So today I lost my yarmulke. So where does Klipa get its chayas from Kedusha? What is Klipa? Klipa is a makif. Right? We saw that. What's makif? Ratzon. Klipa is a function of the Eibishter's ratzon, but it's what's called chitzonius ratzon, the external expression of ratzon, which the Rebbe is going to explain to us. Right? What's external ratzon? Well, I want to do it because I know I have to, but I don't really want to. But I have to, so I want to. Because you can't, we've talked about this many times, you can't do anything you don't want. What does that mean? Well, if you get out of bed, it's because you wanted to get out of bed. And if you stayed in bed, it's because you wanted to stay in bed. Well, I didn't want to get out of bed, but I got out of bed anyway. No, you did want to get out of bed, meaning you made a decision that it was more in your interest to get out of bed than to stay in bed. What might that decision be based on? I'd rather stay employed than be unemployed. Right? No, so that's why you got out of bed. Did you want to? Well, Pnimius Aratzon? No, you don't want to get out of bed. Right? Chitzonius Aratzon? Well, I guess you got out of bed because it was a conscious decision to get out of bed, and you got out of bed because you want to keep your job more than you want to stay in bed. That's the priority that an adult will have. Immature people, it doesn't matter how old they are, it doesn't matter what they say, what it says in their passport, it's a matter of whether they're serious people or not. Mature people will get out of bed. Immature people will lose job after job and come up with excuse after excuse to their boss until the boss, says, okay, just go away. And he'll do that to another boss and another boss. And sooner or later, he must learn at some point that he has to just get out of bed. Right? Maybe he doesn't. I don't know. He goes on welfare. I don't know. Right? But an adult makes that decision. But that's not pnimius aratzon. That's not mamish what I want. Right? Now, going to work also isn't mamish what I want. I would love to have all sorts of money and not have to go to work. If I might enjoy my work, okay, but I'd still like to have more control over how much I work, etc., etc. Okay, fine. So why do we do that? Well, okay, because there's some more all-encompassing ratzon, desire, or agenda, and it doesn't have to be yours, it can be the Eibishter's, that is driving all of those conscious decisions to do those things such that you come to a point where you want to do them. But again, the want, that desire might be more external than internal, depending on those things. There's certain things that you want to do that you don't enjoy doing, but you want to do it. Why? Well, because it has to get done, and I'm just going to do it. I don't really want to, but I'm going to do it. Well, if I'm going to do it, that means I do want to, because I'm making a conscious decision to do it. What I really want, what I'm doing for another reason. Why is it that the Eibishter gives chayas to klipas? Is he interested in klipa per se? No. He's interested in that which klipa allows for, which is called avodah. But where's it coming from? Here's ratzon. Just chitzonius ratzon. And what's the mushal? And we're going to see it in the mimer. It's like someone throwing something over his shoulder. Here, you want it? Okay. How do you give something that you want to give? But pnimius. You're panim. Right? You don't really want to give it? Right? Okay. Now you can face the person also, you throw it down. So you're showing in your action that you don't really want to do it, but you realize you have to do it. So now you did want to do it because you did it. Right? You can't do anything you don't want to do. Yes, we were all told by our parents, you have to learn how to do things you don't want to do. There's no such thing, right? It means you'd have to learn how to make the right priority, have the right priorities, and do things that you don't want to do, but pnimius aratzon, but you want to do it bechitzonius aratzon. Right? You realize you have to do it, so you do it. That's what adults do. Okay. So that's why there's something called klipa. But now that klipa has to have some connection to elokus, or else it can't exist, because elokus is existence. And the connection is what's called the yanika it gets from kedusha. Right? And that's why, right, that we're better at being good and better at being bad. What's the best place for the klipa to get yanika from? A yid. Get a yid involved in klipa? Wow. It's going to be the most powerful klipa around, because it's going to be yonik from the most powerful kedusha around. Right? Pretty powerful klipa, the klipa that you didn't get into. We're good at klipa. We're good at everything. Now these guys told me we're even good at hockey. Astounding. Astounding.
In basketball these days.
Okay, that I don't know.
There's the Israeli guy.
Yeah, Suckle is such a Jewish. He's around.
Is he
Not a
Jewish?
raptor, No.
Oh.
No, he's
Oh,
in
he's
the
a
Washington.
Jewish.
Right?
Jewish though.
You sure he's Jewish?
Yeah, he's Jewish.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't think his
know.
dad's Jewish, but his mother's Israeli.
Ah, yeah, okay.
Yeah,
Or
he's
like-
Serbian.
Okay. No, because when I read the news about the war,
No, fine.
Channel 14, which is the place to get the news about the war that's, pro our side, not pro Iran. It's the Israeli station that's pro-Israel. So the other ones aren't. Well, you laugh, but they're not. Right? I mean, it really is bizarre. But they it's like there's all sorts of stuff. Well, he's always there because he's like he makes them proud or something. I don't know. He's always there. It's like the fifth or sixth story is about him. So then I know the news ended.
Those Serbians take basketball incredibly seriously.
Okay.
Though.
What?
The Serbians take basketball incredibly
Yeah,
seriously.
it's crazy. That's true.
Serbians seem to take everything incredibly seriously.
Especially their basketball, you should
If you
see.
ever live well, I don't know. I think if you were to ask a Croat, he would probably say that there's other things that Serbians take more seriously than basketball, like killing Croats. So, and it might be the Croat has the same position relative to the Serbian. So I think I don't know whether.
But basketball.
Yeah, I don't think they would interrupt the war to play a basketball.
They should just instead of doing war, they should play
Well, now
basketball.
Baruch Hashem, they're getting along, which is nice. Okay, let's get back to our mimer here.
The guy in the Nuggets.
No, hello. We're back here. I brought up an example of Jews doing things of klipa well. Right? So I opened my mouth and looked at Josh and said something about, because he told me there's all these Jewish hockey players. And that was the end of that. Okay, so I won't do that anymore. Right? Shashpa ba miluma zei meisa beribu yesa, third line, Yashpa ba mi kedusha hu davar mischalef shein lekim. It doesn't ultimately last. Why not? Ki la'achar beer, after the beer, which is mimeisa Mashiach, kashi yizbareru anitzutzes, when they're going to be rectified, the sparks of holiness, shenaflu b'klipos, that fell in the klipos. And this is the line we were just explaining. Shemizehu chayus shalem. The chayus of the klipa is the kedusha connected to it. The klipa is a makif. It can't be brought into a positive, proper, orderly expression. Klipa is chaotic, right? What's tikkun? Tikkun is when you bring light into vessels and it expresses itself properly. Right? Chaotic behavior is when the light is too powerful to be clothed in vessels, right? We talked about that's the difference between a child and an adult, right? There are certain, what should an adult be able to do? An adult should be able to deal with very, very difficult emotional circumstances in a healthy way. So an adult should be able to hear very, very bad news, God forbid, and still somehow be able to bring that down into kalim and internalize it in a healthy, positive way. That doesn't mean it makes them happy, but it doesn't destroy their life and they don't fall on the ground and fall to pieces and curl up in a ball and don't go to work for 3 months. It's just not how adults deal with unfortunate circumstances, right? Okay. Matter of fact, when it talks about a very unfortunate circumstance, the passing of a loved one, so what do we do? We sit shiva for a week, and then there's a period called shleishim, and there's a period called the year. But after the week of shiva, what does someone do? They go back to work. They live life. Right? They have new responsibilities. If it's a parent, their new responsibility is, if they're a male, they're going to have to daven from the Amid 3 times a day and say Kaddish, which is an unbelievably difficult thing to do, right, for 11 months. But you do it. Why? Because that's the way it goes. Okay, and you're an adult and you can deal with it. What about a child? Well, a child doesn't have the seichel, which is the kli that allows for the proper internalization and processing of that whole experience. So a child doesn't have the kalim to do that, doesn't have the intellect to properly process it all. So their reaction naturally will be rather chaotic. And they won't be able to relate to this in a healthy way. And they're probably going to have to figure it out in another 10 years when they grow up. They're going to have to rehash the whole thing and figure out why it is that for whatever reason this happened to them when they were 5 years old. Right? Okay. And they'll do it as an adult. They can't do it as a 5-year-old. They don't have the kalim. So what's left? Chaos. So usually it doesn't express itself in such a good way. I mean, it might. It depends. It depends on the kid, etc. But generally, it's going to be a very, very difficult situation for the kid. He can't deal with it. Okay, what's that? Why am I bringing that example? Because that's an example of very, very powerful light. That event is an incredibly powerful emotional event for the adults and the children. But the adults know how to internalize it and deal with it in a healthy way if they're a real adult. Again, it doesn't matter what age you are. It doesn't matter whether you're an adult or not. Right? That's called Meichin the Gadlus, the brain of an adult. They can deal with it and don't fall apart. And the child, I don't expect the child to deal with it. How in the world is the child? He doesn't have the ability to deal with this properly right now. Right? So he's probably going to keep it hidden in there, and it's going to fester for a while. And then when he gets older, he's going to have to deal with it, and hopefully he will, and he can, and he'll deal with it, and get on with life. Right? And the Abishah knows what he's doing. We don't, but he does. Okay, so that's how Klippa works. Klippa, in all of reality, Klippa is that catastrophic event that's just incredibly powerful light. But it has to have some connection to Kedusha in order for it to exist, because it has to have connection to Elokus in order for it to exist. What's its connection to Elokus? It gets its vitality from Kedusha. So there's sparks of Kedusha even in the Klippa. So what will happen? What will happen in Losid Lover when Mashiach comes? Yizbatlu Lagamre, that the Klippa will be done away with completely. Right. So look at footnote 34. Right? Pasuk. It's explained at great length in the City of the Alter Rebbe. Al tivtechu b'nadivim. Don't trust handouts. Now, what did we say? Things you get for free, where do they come from? Klippa. Right? Klippa is bechinam. Right? It's based on what we've been talking about. Right? So in Panemius, what does this mean? Don't fall a trap to things that you're not going to have to work for. Hema klipas, right? Which we said. Ki kasher teitzei ruchei, because when his spirit goes out, what's that? Ruach HaKadusha, when the spirit of holiness, mirapach nitzutzin, from the 288, 288 sparks shenaflu b'hem, that fell. In other words, those sparks of Kedusha that power the Klippa, when that comes out, what happens? Avdu eshtanesav, they disappear. Their reality is done away with. In other words, what will Ruach HaTumah, va'avers Ruach HaTumah mina aretz, there won't be Tumah losid love. Oh, so what does the Pikach understand? That the power of the Klippa is only temporary. But ultimately, everything's going to come out in the wash, and we'll see that what's real is the king and not the Sarim. Again, the Sarim are the intermediaries and the improper relationship with the intermediaries, the Klippa of it all, right? So that's all going to disappear. That's what he understands. Umikol shekain b'negei Yisrael, all the more so relative to the Yidden. Shegam achshav, that even now, and this is really interesting what the Rebbe says here, right? Zeh sheYisrael yecholim lekabel chayas meiluma zeh. That which a Jew can get vitality from the other side, hurak lefi sha'ah, it's only temporary. So the Rebbe seems to be saying, and this is how the Mashpim in our generation explain it, though it's very, it's hard to see how this works in Gashmias, but that the Yid's connection to Klippa will be temporary, meaning even before Mashiach, ultimately, the house of cards will fall. I mean, there seem to be Yidden who, do well in Klippa and die, having done well in Klippa, right? Right? There are a lot who fall. There's no doubt about that, right? But okay. So that's a difficult line to understand. But up until now, what are we saying? What's pshad? And it's mischalef that when Mashiach comes, it won't be around. Right? Okay. So keep reading. We'll see why the Rebbe thinks this. Now we know this is not going to be the explanation of it all, right? Because the Rebbe said l'chu'ur, at first glance you could say like this. This is only first glance. Usually what you see at first glance without thinking about it a little bit is not necessarily the whole picture. V'cheinu li'idich gisa, so too on the other side, the other way of looking at it. The zesh hashpa ba'mi kedusha, that which the hashpa, the bounty that comes from kedusha, hiba medida v'agbala, He's limited. That also achshav. That's also only now in Golos. Aval la'achrei she's gala shorish the bechinas apinimius. That when it will be revealed, the source of all, which the quality of the panemius, what's that? Shorshehu mi panemius amakif. That the source of the kedusha is from panemius amakif, a deeper place in makif. We said the source of the klipa comes from makif. What? A level of reality that can't be incorporated in a healthy and positive way in keli. Chaos. That's klipa. Okay. What's kedusha? Kedusha is a level that can. But there's also a source in makif, there's also a rotzain of kedusha, a source of makif, an incredibly powerful level of holiness. Positive, holy will. Okay, what's that? That's the Eibishter's ultimate purpose in creation. What does Eibishter really want? He wants klipa? No, he wants kedusha. In order for our connection to kedusha to be real, what does he do? He also allows for the existence of klipa. But the panemius of Ratzon, what does he really want? He wants Torah mitzvahs. That's what he wants. He wants to do b'dach Torah. He's not interested in klipa. Klipa is just there as a means to an end, but it's not really what he wants. It's there because he wants you and I to have a real relationship with him. And in order for you and I to have a real relationship with him, there has to be a possibility of not having such a relationship, because he wants the relationship to be real. He doesn't want it to be like Malachim. Malachim can't not have a relationship with the Kadosh Baruch Hu. That's just who they are. All right? Okay. A person in this world can decide that they don't want a relationship with the Kadosh Baruch Hu. The Eibishter will let them do whatever they want. Okay. Therefore, if they have a relationship with the Kadosh Baruch Hu, it means something. That's what the Eibishter wants. Therefore, he allows for the existence of klipa. But what's panemius or ratzon? What does he really want? He really wants Torah and mitzvahs. He really wants to be revealed in the lower realms. That's what he wants. Why? I don't know, but that's what he wants. What does he really want? He really wants a relationship with you. That's what he really wants. He wants that relationship. He wants you to have a relationship with him. And he has a relationship with us, right? But he wants that also to become realized and revealed. But he wants it to become realized and revealed in the context of a reality where it's possible to ignore it. By angels, it's impossible to ignore. And that relationship evidently doesn't give him a lot of pleasure. Whatever. I'm sure he gets some pleasure from the angels. I mean, they're pretty sweet, the angels. Right? But where does he get his real pleasure from? You and I serving him in the dark. He loves it. Just loves it. Right? It's dark. We're still just hanging out there. We're going to put on our tefillin this morning. Hopefully I'll have another keeper every night to my talis. I can find something a little, first of all, this is small, but, right, okay. But we're gonna put on tefillin, and we're gonna do our best to tell him that we think he's just the greatest thing that ever has been and ever will be, and it's amazing, and he's incredible, and we love him. I'm gonna try to say that, right? Even though there's gonna be pink strawberry yogurt waiting for us after davening. It might taste better than Shemon Esrei. Right? Might be the taste of the yogurt is more powerful than the taste of Shemon Esrei, the taste of the godliness in Shemon Esrei. It's Tamaru, right? David HaMelech says, Tamaru ki tevavaya. Taste and see that the Eibishter is good. Oh, it's a lot easier to taste the peach pudding than the whatever, not yogurt. They call it yogurt, not yogurt. It's just peach pudding. We checked it out once, right? The sugar in the chocolate pudding and the sugar in the so-called healthy yogurt is exactly the same. So if you want something where you might as well just eat the chocolate pudding, who are you kidding, right? The chocolate pudding, everybody knows chocolate pudding is better than anything else. Right? Okay, Beseder, I'm just, in my family they always said this is a long tradition that you rate cakes from a scale of 1 to 8, and chocolate ones are 9 or 10. That's how you rate a cake. A really, really good non-chocolate cake could be an 8. Okay, chocolate ones are 9 or 10. Okay, what's all that? That's all klipa. Why do we like that? There's no avoida to like that, right? It's not an avoida to like that. Is it an avoida to enjoy the challenge of davening? That's an avoida. That takes a lot of work. It's an avodah to enjoy breakfast. It's an avodah to enjoy breakfast. You just like, if it's good food, you just enjoy it. That's not a very, not that it's bad. It's whole, it's good food, but it's still klipa, right? Still gashmias, right? You have to work to enjoy it. No, you have to work to enjoy kedusha. Yeah, you have to work to enjoy kedusha. Takes a while for Shabbos to be the most pleasant and enjoyable day of the week. It takes a while. At first, Shabbos might be somewhat limiting, right? There's all these things I can't do. I know I'm not supposed to, and I'm deciding to become a religious Jew, and it's sort of hard. And there's these things I can't do on Shabbos, and I really can't wait Mitzi Shabbos so I can open my phone and see all those things that I missed on Shabbos. Okay, and then after a while, Shabbos, right? How do people? And I think most of us would read. How do people live without Shabbos? How do you go through life without Shabbos? How can it be? But that takes a while, right? Until you get to that. And that's not even a lot of avodah. That's just sort of doing it. But you have to do it right in order to reach that state. If you do Shabbos wrong, you're never going to reach that state, right? If in the middle of Shabbos you look up what you have to look up just because you couldn't stand, then you put it away. So it's, 35 seconds of klipa in the middle of all the kedusha, so then it's not Shabbos. Right? Do Shabbos right. After a while, what's going to happen? You can't imagine life without Shabbos. Right? And I think most of us can't. Those years when Yom Kippur falls out on Shabbos, okay, it's Yom Kippur, it's an unbelievably holy day. But it's still funny because you're sort of like, I didn't have a Shabbos this week. Didn't come home, make kiddush, sit down. Like there wasn't Shabbos this week. You go 14 days. Now you don't, because 4 days later is going to be Sukkot. So but it's a strange feeling. Right? You have all these days without a Shabbos in the middle. Right? But for some people, Shabbos looks like all this limitation. I can't go to the beach. What'll I do? You see, go to the beach every day. On Tuesday, you go to the beach? No, it ruins your Tuesday. Right? You don't go to the beach because you're at work. Okay, so you go to the beach because you're at play. It's called Shabbos. It's the problem. But that takes a while to get to that point. It's called work. And that's how you get Kedusha. Mm-hmm. What's going to happen in the end? We'll see an explosion of Panemius Hamakif. And therefore what? 7 lines up. Hashpa miya kedusha tia baribui godel. So then all of the hashpa of kedusha will be in greater bounty, greater amount than miya ribu de nishpa miya chitzonius hamakif, that was ever brought down into the world through chitzonius hamakif. So the Pikach understands that in the end it's all going to work out. Now we know this isn't the right answer because the Rebbe said, let's get to the point where the Rebbe explains why this isn't the right answer, and then we'll stop. Hashayach gam la'ashpia b'klipas. Right? The chitzonius hamakif is that which is drawn down into klipas. Kamaimer Chazal, like Chazal say, quoting Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva sees the riches of the Roman emperor and the Roman governor of Eretz Yisrael. And his friends are all upset. Look at his low life and look at what he's got. It just bothers them. Right? So what did Rabbi Akiva say? Im la'evri ritzeinei kach. If to the people who transgress his will, this is the goodness they get. La'isi ritzeinei alachas kama v'kama. Imagine the goodness that he has in store for those people who keep his will. Imagine what he's got in store for them. But when's it all going to happen? Lasi loving. Aval, okay, so that's mischalef and mischalef. Ultimately, what's going to be the goodness for the one who's connected to kedusha, and that's why he's a pikach, because he can see the famous Ezu Chacham Arayis Anela, the one who sees what's going to be. He's the real Chacham, and that's why he's connecting to the king. But the Rebbe says, "Aval bir zein must be. This isn't sufficient. Why? Why is this guy doing it? Why is he making this decision? Why is he picking the king and not the Sarim, according to what we just said? If that's the explanation of Mischalef and Mischalef. For his benefit. When?
Now.
No.
Oh, no.
Doesn't get it now. Later. But what's he interested in?
God.
No.
Benefit.
Benefit. Same benefit. He's just going to get it later, not now. Okay, well, we do understand that there are people who are smart enough to realize that it might take time to get what it is that I'm working for, but it's worth working for, right? Okay, but I'm still. Why am I any different than the guy? And I'm not saying this is an improper way to make a living. I'm just but there are people who don't really want to go to work in the morning and they just want to figure out how. And sometimes they can figure this out, but often they lose as quickly as they win. I just want it fast. I'm going to invest in the market and hope I hit it big fast, and then I'm on easy street. Right? Okay. Now that might work. Right? But it might be that the guy makes, $20 million on a deal in the market, and then he loses it the next day because it can go down as quickly as it goes up. But okay. Whereas a person goes to work every day and produces something, so, his profit margin is going to be smaller, but it's going to be more real, and he sees that, in the end, what he gets will last. Okay, fine, true. But if that's the way he's looking at it, so then he's the same as the guy who wants to make it fast. It's just that he's just willing to put in the hard work to make it a little more permanent, right? Or he's not bothered by the delay before he gets what it is that he wants. Even the choice of the pikach b'melech u'bishvil hashpah, it's for the bounty that he'll get. V'chiluk bein elu vein elu shebachru basarim. What's the difference between him and the people who chose the sarim in the mashal, duchsin v'chulei? Who shehem chayshvim rak b'matzav ha'heva. They're thinking about now. How can I get what I want now? Right? Ahoiva, present. V'pikach chayshev mashiyah basid. And the pikach is smart enough to say, what's going to be? I'm willing to put in the work and the sacrifice in order to get something that will be, but it'll last longer. Right? Mashiyah basid. Al derech maimer chazal, like chazal say, ezu chacham areis aneilat. Right? Who's the chacham? The one who sees that which will be born. In other words, he sees the ramifications of his actions. But that's not pshat the medrash. That which it said in the medrash, that the reason that the Jews serve a Kadosh Baruch Hu is mipnei ki chelki havaya amra nafshi. The Eibishter is my portion. Muchach. That shows very clearly. The zeh, we got the page kuf gimmel, and that's what we wanted to get, and we're going to stop in a minute. The zeh shapikach beicher b'melech. That which the pikach chooses the king. It's not for the benefit that's going to be for him. That's not what he's thinking about. It's coming from the melech. That which the Yidden choose a Kadosh Baruch Hu, Afsha Achshav, even though now Ribuy Hashpah, it might be that the great Hashpah, he la'ovrei ritzonei, who is to the people who transgress his will, seems to look good on that other side, if you don't really see what's going on. The reason he doesn't go to the side of the Eiver Ritzonei is not because ultimately he's going to get more. That's not why he does it. Elo, but rather because the benefit he gets is from the inner desire of the king, and in this case the Eibishter, the Cheftze Amiti, and his true desire. What's the true desire of the king? To give benefit to the world as a result of their Aveda. V'hashpa la'over ritzayna, and the hashpa to the ones who transgress his will, who command the shadei basar kasvi. This is what we said earlier, right? Like the one who throws over his shoulder l'soiner to the one that he hates. Against his will. Now, it's not against his will because he's doing it, but it means it's not paninius aratzon, it's chitzonius aratzon. This is necessary to do, but it's not really what I want to do. Right? Is the Eibishter interested in klipa? Well, obviously he is, because he created a world with it. But the klipa is chitzonius aratzon, not paninius aratzon. Now the Rebbe is explaining why the world works the way the world works. Right? And you look around and you'll see people who are absolute creeps and they seem to win. Yeah, there's a lot of power in klipa. Klipa is very, very powerful. If it weren't as powerful as it is, so then it wouldn't in any way, shape, or form be something that would bother us, such that our avodah would be real avodah, because I don't want to have anything to do with that. Right? No, there's some stuff over there looks pretty good. I don't have to live like them, but I can take advantage of. Right? To see what the Rebbe says about it. Right? So what we'll see it tomorrow. We'll stop now. We'll see it tomorrow. We're not having a day of review simply because I wanted to make sure that we finish the Maimer before we stop before Pesach. So if we see that we're on a pace to do that, then we can take a day to do review. If not, just find time in your own time to do the review. So based on this, the Rebbe is going to explain what mischalef ve'enu mischalef is. It's not the reason. It's the proof. What's the proof that the king is real? Because it doesn't change. Emes is emes and never changes. What's the proof that the shefa of the lumazeh is not real? Because it disappears. It doesn't last. Emes is real and emes lasts. Something that's true is always true. Absolute truth is absolute truth. Hashem Echad doesn't change based on any reality that might happen in Olam Hazeh. It's just a truth that is. Torah is true. Torah doesn't change. Okay. So when the Peacock chooses the king, he doesn't choose the king because the king doesn't change and the Sarim do. He chooses the king because the proof that the king is truth and the Sarim aren't is that the king doesn't change because the king is emes and the Sarim do. It's an unbelievable pshat in the Medrash. It's not the reason. It's the proof for the fact that choosing the king is the right thing to do. Right? Because the king's truth. How do I know the king is truth? Because he doesn't change. He's always there. Emes is emes. Right? Whereas the king doesn't die. Emes doesn't die. Right? Okay. I mean, the physical king might die, the Seder, but the Eibishter, Nimshal, so the king is an absolute truth that never changes. Oh, that's how you know it's real. That's why he chooses it. Not because, it's simply the proof that the king is real. It's not the reason the king is real. It's the proof. It's an unbelievable shot in the Medrash. That's the Rebbe is about to tell us. Right? That means any other state of reality is only temporary. So what do we say Klipa is? Klipa is mavis. It's death. Death applies to Klipa. Death does not apply to Kedusha. Right? Which part of a human being, we don't refer to Jews as dying, right? We call it niftar. Right? So what does that mean? That means that their neshama is no longer clothed in their body. Did they die? No. The neshama is as alive as ever. They didn't die. Their body is no longer where their neshama is expressing itself. Well, where was the neshama before it was clothed in their body? Oh, sourced above. Right? Okay, so that neshama then comes down into a body, vargles around in Olam Hazeh for, 120 years, does whatever it does in Olam Hazeh, very successfully, does amazing stuff in Olam Hazeh, and then that neshama leaves the body. The neshama died? The neshama didn't die. Who's the real person? Well, obviously the real person is the neshama. That's who he was before he came into a body, and that's who he is after he leaves a body. So it happened to be for a temporary amount of time, a relatively short amount of time, that neshama was clothed in a body, running around in Olam Hazeh, doing whatever neshamas do in Olam Hazeh. Okay, hopefully good stuff. Fine. So that person dies? No, that person's his neshama. That neshama was around before, and that neshama is around after. There's no death in Kedusha. There's death in Klipa. Gashmias can disappear, so the body will disappear. It'll, just disappear. I'm a Seder, you can't destroy matter, so it'll turn into something else. Whatever it turns into. Right? So there's bones there for a while. Rabbi Eliyahu told a story about bones and stuff. So you should know that, there's some holy people out there. Rabbi Eliyahu, Rabbi Mordechai Eliyahu was a very, very big makubal. He was the chief rabbi of the state for a while, chief Sephardi rabbi. After Rav Avadia Yosef was chief rabbi, so he became chief rabbi. Very, very, very special Jew, incredibly close connection with the rabbi. And he wanted to bring the Chidah to Eretz Yisrael. The Chidah was buried in Chutz La'aretz, and he wanted to bring the Chidah to Eretz Yisrael. So they went to find the Chidah, and somehow he was buried in this tiny little box. It's something that it was like, and evidently his bones were all mixed up. And this is what happened with the Chevra Kadisha were there when this happened. Right? The people who were going to help him bring the Chidah to Eretz Yisrael and bury him. So Rav Mordechai Eliyahu saw what was going on, and the Chidah was in there, but his bones were all messed up. So he said to the Chidah, I don't know exactly what words he said, but something along the lines of, and all the people who were there saw this, and they ran out of the room. Right? He said to the Chidah, it's not lefi your covered to be such a mess. Bones, arrange yourself. And they hear inside the box all this stuff happening, and they ended up a skeleton, normal skeleton that you would hang in a doctor's office. He ended up one of those. The people were there, freaked out, and ran out of the room. And so Rav Eliyahu was left guarding him until he got them back, and they took him and they buried him. But that happened with the bones of the Chidah. His yahrzeit was just a couple of weeks ago, so it came up. What I forgot to mention yesterday, I feel bad, is that I forgot to mention that it was Rav Melech's yahrzeit yesterday. Rav Melech of Lezhansk was one of the holy brotherhood of Talmidim of the Maggid. He's one of the oldest Talmidim of the Maggid. He was the father of Pelish of Chassidus. Rav Melech of Lezhansk, he was the brother of Elimelech. He was the brother of Zusha Vanipoli. Zusha is one of the approbations on Tanya. Zusha and Rabbi Yehuda Bekayin are buried on each side of the Maggid. Maggid's kever, they're on each side. And it's interesting in Tanya, there's their approbations are on each side of the page.
What did you say the name of the rabbi that his yahrzeit was yesterday?
Rav Elimelech of Lezhansk, Rav Melech. So you can still go to. He's in Lezhansk. He's still there. It's Poland, so it's easier to get to. It's not Ukraine. No, most of the big Hasidic Beyom are buried in Ukraine, so you can't get there. But or you can, but it's pretty hard. Very, very holy. They just a quick story of Rav Melech. My brother, I think he actually even went last year, but for years and years, every year he used to take. He teaches in a post high school program, 18-year-old post high seminary of modern Orthodox girls, right? And it's a very good school in the south of the city. He's been there for 35, 40 years. They retired him, but he still teaches there. So he used to take them on to Poland every year. They go to Poland, Ukraine, go to Kvaris, and they'd go to. A lot of these girls, they went to the kever of their grandparents for the first time, or they went to where their grandparents were killed. Their probably great grandparents by now, but when he started doing this 40 years ago, it was their grandparents, right? A lot of these girls came from families who came from Europe and either made it out or didn't make it out. Someone made it out because they're around. So it was a tremendous experience for the kids, and he would usually take them before Pesach, this time of year, and the weather can be a little spicy in Eastern Europe this kind of time of year. So there was a guy named Peter who was their guide, non-Jewish guy who was their guide, but he knew everything. He took Jewish groups all the time, but he himself wasn't Jewish. So once my brother knew this guy. So he said, Peter, the weather is amazing. How did you get such good weather for us? So Peter, the non-Jew, says, I went to Rav Melech. He went to the gravesite of Rav Melech. The guy said, I went to Rav Melech. And I told him I have a group coming. And could he please help arranged that the weather's good because, you know, they want them to have nice weather so they can have a more successful trip. So I have no idea if Rav Melech pulled it off or not, but it's so interesting. The non-Jewish Pole knows there's this holy rabbi who's buried here, and I can go to him and ask him for a few favors, and we'll see if it doesn't.
This is why people think the Jews control the weather.
And we control everything. We do control the weather. You say it in davening every single day, right? If there's not rain, it's because there's something wrong with our avodah. And if there is rain, it's because we're doing what the Eibishter wants us to do. No, it's not in the second parak of Kriya Shema. Everything they say about us is true. They just say it all for the wrong reasons, right? They just, but it's, you know, it's true.
It's like most stereotypes.
Chabad. Right? We're into Messianism and we want to build the third temple. Yeah, you got that right. We're not responsible for a war in Iran. But might that be part of the process? Well, not only might, it obviously is part of the process. How? I don't know. The Eibishter can't do it without this part of the process. Of course he can, but for whatever reason, he wants to see Iran blow up before he